Kena Bridge of Spirits is the debut game from Ember Lab, an animation studio who you might know for their fantastic Majora's Mask fan film, Terrible Fate, and what a valiant first effort it is. Kena Bridge of Spirits has been on my radar since the PS5 reveal event, largely due to its breathtakingly beautiful visuals, but I was curious if the gameplay could back up Kena's incredible aesthetic. Fortunately, it really can. And Kena is not only one of the best PlayStation exclusives of 2021, but one of my favourite games of the year. In Kena Bridge of Spirits, you play as the titular Kena, a spirit guide who helps the recently deceased transition from the world of the living to the afterlife. But when she encounters a mysterious spirit who's spreading corruption across the world, she realises she'll have to track him down and defeat him to restore beauty and life to the land. Kena Bridge of Spirits is a game filled with heart, and as you'd probably expect in a story that's largely centred around death, it can also be pretty emotional at times, though it does a great job of feeling more bittersweet and heartfelt than depressing. As you've no doubt noticed by now, Kena's visuals are jaw-droppingly gorgeous, both in terms of its beautiful art style and its silky smooth animation. Kena's aesthetic seems to draw inspiration from Pixar movies, as well as other animated films like Kubo and the Two Strings. After just a few minutes of looking at Kena, you can see the team's animation background shining through. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that this is one of the best looking games I've ever seen. Character design is something else Kena does incredibly well. Kena herself has a very cool design. She's the kind of character that makes a perfect mascot, and I love the menacing look of the corrupted creatures Kena's forced to battle along the way. Oddly though, Kena is one of the few games I've ever played that actually looks better in motion than it does during cutscenes. Cutscenes have a low frame rate, stuttery style of animation to them, and while I actually don't have any problem with this style when it's done well, I think movies like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse have used it to wonderful effect, for example, in Kena it just doesn't feel exaggerated enough. It's minimal enough that at first I was questioning if it was even intentional, or if the game's cutscenes were just running poorly for some reason. I think if you're not going to commit all the way to this style, you should really just stick to a more smooth style of animation. Don't let Kena's Pixar-esque visuals fool you, this is anything but a kid's game. In fact, it can be surprisingly punishing, especially as you get towards the end. Gameplay-wise, Kena almost feels like a PS2 game in a lot of ways, and I don't mean that as an insult. It's quite mechanically simple, but it revels in that simplicity. Kena feels like a game that knows exactly what it's setting out to be, and it achieves nearly everything it strives for. Kena's whimsical and gorgeous world is packed with lush and vibrant jungles and dim labyrinthian caves, and Kena's skill set makes them a pleasure to explore. Being a spirit guide, Kena has some unique abilities. She has a double jump that allows her to cross large gaps with ease, the ability to conjure up energy bombs that can create new pathways through the environment, and her staff can also transform into a magical bow that can be used to hit targets and levers that would normally be out of reach. And she can even use her bow to instantly pull herself to special flowers in the environment, letting her get to higher ground in an instant. Kena's also able to utilise spirit masks, magical masks that highlight important items in the environment and guide you to your next objective. They can even break through mystical barriers to unlock new areas. Kena will regularly come across areas that have been corrupted by the darkness that's consuming the world. When this happens, you'll need to clear the area of corrupted enemies, then use Kena's powers to purify the area, returning it to its former colourful state. A gripe I have with Kena is that it doesn't let you set waypoints on the map, and that's a feature that by all accounts is pretty standard nowadays. Constantly having to pull up your map to check you're still heading in the right direction can really take you out of the game. It's grating and not something you expect to deal with in a modern game. Combat in Kena is very satisfying. Kena largely fights enemies with her staff, and the blows you land with it have a nice weightiness to them. Battles are based around learning enemy patterns and getting their timing down to figure out when you can land a couple of quick jabs on them and when they're going to be standing still for a second so that you can wail on them with a couple of heavy attacks. While combat starts out very simple, it does get a lot more robust over time, as you start filling out your skill tree and unlocking new abilities. Kana's bow and bombs are of course also integral in combat, allowing you to attack enemies from afar and quickly pick off weaker enemies at the beginning of a fight, so you can focus on the real threats. Kana's boss fights are fittingly epic and cinematic, and I love the intimidating boss designs. I also really like how challenging these boss fights are, and how they make you use all of Kana's abilities. So you always have to be 100% focused when taking a boss on, especially if you crank the difficulty up to hard. The camera does have a tendency to be a little chaotic during boss fights though, with the geometry of the world occasionally obscuring your view. Along her journey, Kana is joined by the Rot, tiny fluffy black creatures that can assist Kana in combat and help her navigate the world by shifting things around and banding together to break through obstacles in the environment. They're almost a little Pikmin-esque. When you first start a battle, the Rot will be intimidated by your opponents, so you'll need to build up their courage meter by dealing damage to enemies. Once their courage gauge is full, you'll be able to get them to perform a Rot action. These include using a flower in the environment to heal Kana, or swarming an enemy leaving them rendered immobile while Kana wails away at them with her staff. This ability comes in particularly handy in boss fights, as it's a good way to keep the boss distracted while you take out the weaker goons surrounding it. Rot can be found scattered around the environments, and as the amount of Rot you've recruited increases, so does the amount of abilities they can use. Kana does a great job of rewarding you for poking around every nook and cranny of its map. You'll regularly be finding hidden Rot, as well as chests that contain money, hats that you can equip the Rot with, and Karma, the currency that's used to upgrade the abilities of Kana and her Rot companions. Occasionally, you'll even stumble across a cursed chest, which will slash your health, then force you to fight a series of enemies if you want to get the reward inside. There's even hidden meditation spots where Kana will take a moment to center herself, and by meditating at these spots, Kana's health bar will be permanently increased. One thing that really bugged me was the fact that you're constantly finding money, but there's literally only one thing that it can be spent on, which is more hats for the Rot. It would definitely have been nice to have another use for that money, like maybe some way to customize Kana or her staff, as well as just the Rot. Kana's sound design is fantastic all around. The music has a great sense of whimsy and curiosity to it that really fits this style of game, and the drum-driven battle music helps to crank up the intensity of fights. Kana Bridge of Spirits is so good that it's almost hard to believe that this is Ember Lab's first game. Kana's gorgeous visuals, satisfying combat, and heartfelt story make it one of the most impressive debut games I've ever seen from a studio. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You can also find countless other videos on my channel, including my recent reviews of Life is Strange True Colors and Deathloop. And stay tuned for my upcoming reviews of Far Cry 6, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, and Unpacking.